It was February 3rd, 1999. A young man named Joseph Bello was walking home from an all-night vigil in Lagos, Nigeria. The morning air was crisp. His heart was full from worship. Joseph was singing softly to himself as he crossed the Oyoduberger flyover. But then something strange happened. He heard another voice singing along with him. A woman's voice, faint but clear. Joseph stopped singing and listened carefully. Where was this voice coming from? As he looked around, Joseph realized something chilling. The voice was coming from underneath the flyover. This wasn't just any ordinary place. Locals knew that a madman lived down there, a man they called Clifford Orji. People avoided that area, but curiosity got the better of Joseph. He had to know who was singing down there and why. As Joseph climbed down under the flyover, a terrible smell hit him, the stench of burning flesh. It was nauseating, but he pressed on, following the sound of the woman's voice. What he discovered would shock Nigeria to its core. Joseph found a makeshift shelter built from old car tires. Smoke was rising from inside. As he peered closer, his stomach turned. There, roasting over an open fire, were human limbs. A hand, a leg, being cooked like pieces of meat. Joseph nearly vomited. He ran back up to the road and called for help. Soon, a crowd had gathered. They all went down to see what this young man had discovered. When they reached the tire shelter, Clifford Orji was nowhere to be found. He had fled when he saw the crowd approaching. But the people began searching through his makeshift home. What they found was beyond horrific. Human remains everywhere, cooked body parts, bones from previous victims, and then, compressed into a small space between the tires, they found her. The woman who had been singing. Her name was Awalalawa. She was barely alive, emaciated, terrified. The crowd rushed her to the hospital, but sadly, she fell into a coma and died days later. Meanwhile, the mob chased down Clifford Orji and dragged him back to his lair. They began destroying everything. As they tore apart his shelter, they made another discovery. Clifford had a neighbor, another homeless man named Tahiru Aluda, who lived nearby. When they searched his area, they found a hole about 4 meters deep. This is where victims were kept before being killed. Both men were arrested immediately. But this story was far from over. In fact, it was just beginning. When police searched Clifford's belongings, they found something that changed everything. A check for 80,000 naira, and even more shocking, a GSM mobile phone. This was 1999. Mobile phones weren't available to the general public in Nigeria until 2000 or 2001. Only the very wealthy had access to them. Politicians, business elites, the powerful few who could afford such luxury. So how did a homeless man living under a bridge get his hands on a mobile phone worth more than most people's annual salary? The answer would reveal a conspiracy that reached into Nigeria's highest circles. Clifford himself provided the explanation. Yes, he told police, wealthy and powerful people came to visit him. They gave him money, gifts, and that mobile phone. But why? What could these influential figures possibly want from a man living in squalor under a flyover? The answer lay in what police didn't find: among the human remains. As investigators catalogued the gruesome evidence, they noticed something disturbing. Body parts were scattered everywhere: arms, legs, torsos. But there was one thing consistently missing from every victim: their heads. Where were the skulls? What had Clifford done with them? He certainly wasn't eating them. Human heads aren't exactly practical for consumption. The terrible truth became clear. The missing heads weren't missing at all. They were being sold to those same wealthy politicians who visited Clifford with checks and mobile phones. Nigeria has a dark history with ritual practices. Some people believe human body parts, especially heads, can bring power, wealth, or spiritual protection. It's a horrific trade that exists in the shadows of society. Clifford Orji wasn't just a cannibal, he was a supplier in the most evil business imaginable. The evidence was right there. The check should have led police to whoever was buying from Clifford, but mysteriously, those leads were never fully pursued. No wealthy patrons were ever arrested or charged. This raises the question: how deep did this conspiracy go? Were people in power protecting the investigation from reaching too high? Let's go back to how this all began. Clifford Orji was originally from Enugu State. He came to Lagos seeking a better life, like millions of others. At first, he was just a struggling businessman selling razor blades in the market. When that failed, he ended up homeless under the flyover. To some people passing by, Clifford appeared to be just another madman. He would chase people with sticks, run around naked, act erratically. Most people avoided him and minded their own business, but to a select few, Clifford presented himself differently. He claimed to have spiritual powers. He told people he could solve their problems, make them wealthy, or give them answers about their lives. This is how he lured his victims. Clifford targeted vulnerable people: the poor, the desperate, those whose families wouldn't immediately search for them if they disappeared. He promised them spiritual solutions to their problems. When they came to his lair seeking help, they never left alive. According to his confession, Clifford and Tahiru had been operating since 1992. That's 7 years of killing before they were caught, 7 years of supplying human heads to wealthy customers. But here's what I believe really happened. Clifford didn't start as a cannibal. He started as a body parts dealer. Think about it logically. A politician or ritualist approaches this desperate homeless man with an offer: bring me human heads, and I'll pay you more money than you've ever seen. For someone living in poverty, it's an offer that's hard to refuse. So Clifford begins luring victims and killing them. He cuts off their heads and sells them to his wealthy clients. But what does he do with the rest of the body? He can't just bury them all around the flyover. Someone would eventually notice. That's when he started eating his victims. Not because he preferred human meat, but because it was the most efficient way to dispose of the evidence. Clifford later told investigators that human flesh tasted just like goat meat to him. He felt no moral distinction between the two. This suggests his cannibalism was practical, not preferential. The eating was secondary. The real business was selling body parts to people with money and power. This theory is supported by what happened to Clifford after his arrest. Despite the overwhelming evidence against him, he never faced trial. He was taken to Kirikiri Maximum Security Prison and held there indefinitely. In 2012, prison officials announced that Clifford Orji had died from psychosis and mental illness. Many people don't believe this story. They think he was silenced to protect the powerful people he could have exposed in court. Even more telling, no one ever claimed Clifford's body. No family members, no friends, no one. His body remains unclaimed to this day. The case of Clifford Orji revealed something ugly about Nigerian society. It showed how corruption and ritual beliefs can create a market for the most heinous crimes imaginable. It showed how the powerful can exploit the desperate, turning them into monsters to feed their own twisted needs. And it showed how justice can be perverted when the guilty have enough money and influence to escape consequences. Joseph Bello's curiosity that February morning exposed Nigeria's first known case of organized cannibalism. But it also exposed something worse, a system that allowed it to happen and then covered it up. The victims of Clifford Orji, except for Awalalawa and a trader named Eno, whose fresh head was found, were never identified. Their families never got closure. Their killers never faced proper justice. Most importantly, the people who created the market for human body parts, who paid Clifford to kill, were never held accountable. The Clifford Orji case remains a stain on Nigeria's justice system. It's a reminder that some evils run deeper than individual madness. Sometimes, the real monsters wear expensive suits and hold positions of power. They just pay other people to do their dirty work. Today, as Nigeria continues to struggle with corruption and ritual killings, the lessons of Clifford Orji remain painfully relevant. Until we address the demand side of these crimes, the wealthy patrons who fund them, will never truly solve the problem. The madman under the flyover was caught and died in prison. But the real architects of these crimes are still out there, still in power, still creating markets for human misery. And that's perhaps the most chilling part of this story. Justice delayed is justice denied. And in the case of Clifford Orji, justice was not just delayed, it was deliberately buried along with the truth.